Let's have a candid conversation. Whether or not dogs can judge good people from bad people. So many listeners called up and said, "Hey Warren, I started dating a new person and my dog doesn't like that person." Or I have a next door neighbor. The dog gets along with everyone, but he's not thrilled with this new neighbor. And then the question often comes up, "Warren, I rescued my dog from the shelter and he loves everyone except the guy down the block comes over and the dog doesn't like him at all." So are dogs really a good judge of character? Can they really tell the difference between a good person and a bad person? And if so, how do they do it? I try to explain to people that dogs also learn through the associative memory. So many of the dogs we adopt from shelters and rescues have been abused, neglected, and in some cases strictly emotionally abused or totally ignored. And all of these things can cause a dog to react. For example, I remember years ago working with a dog confiscated from someone, a homeless person who had a beard and a mustache. So when I walked into the house, seeing me from a distance, the association of my beard and my mustache triggered the dog's reaction. In this case, it was an assertive or an aggressive reaction. I remember a case I was working where I had a hat on and the dog reacted. And after delving into it, the dog was abused by someone who wore hats constantly. You know, we could desensitize the dog and teach him that men with beards are okay and people that wear hats are okay as well. So are dogs really that good at judging someone's character? Well, yeah, they are. Dogs understand. Dogs read us so much better than them. I wish we understood their body language as well as they understood us. People that react differently, they might be nervous, twitching their hands or scratching their head. These are all triggers for a dog. And a dog is able to pick up on our body language so much more readily than we can pick up on theirs, unless we're trained to do so. And, we as people, we don't realize it. We're always sending out cues. And as a behaviorist trainer, that's critical. For example, swallowing may be a cue. Going to scratch your head may be a cue. All of these things can be cues. Even the smallest cue, a sneeze, a cough. All of these things can trigger a reaction on the dog's part that may cause a dog to react one way to one person and not to another person. For example, I've worked with dogs over the years that had a really, really negative reaction to either a very deep voice or a very high-pitched voice. In situations with that high-pitched voice, I would always delve and find out maybe perhaps the dog was abused by children, and in many cases the dog was abused by children, therefore reacting to a more high-pitched voice. And in other cases, the dog would react to a deep or lower-pitched voice based on the fact that he had negative associations with that. But what about the average dog? The average dog can really watch. They pick up on our body movements. Any body movements that change can trigger the dog and say into himself, "You know what? That's something I'm not happy with." Not only body movements, the tone of voice is critical as well, and chemical changes in our body. When I was in Europe, I did a type of training called Schutzhund training. And one of the things that's used when you're training a dog for protective purposes is an agitator. And very often the agitator would try to get himself into a position where he actually was a criminal. The way he looked, the anger, the facial expressions, all of those things. And we were able to pick up that the dogs were actually picking up on the change of the body chemistry based on the emotions of the human being. So it's not unusual that someone who your dog reacts to may be either fearful of dog and their chemistry is changing, causing the dog to react, or maybe that type of person that is assertive or aggressive to dogs, and that may be the same reaction that they're getting. The dog is basically responding to those chemical changes. If a dog reacts in a positive way, doesn't necessarily mean that person's a saint. I trust my dog's instincts way better than I trust my own instincts. I honestly believe that dogs are much, much better at judging people than we are. People can put on a straight face and they can lie. Dogs never lied to me. They've always been honest. I always knew where I stood up front with the dog. If they didn't like me, they didn't buy me a drink first and call me an SOB when I left. I knew they didn't like me right up front. Remember, from a dog's point of view, a new person moving into the house is nothing more than an interloper. If your dog is reacting aggressively towards someone, it just means there's something that's not right there, something you need to work on. And if you can't work on it, hiring a professional is the way to go. So remember, when in doubt, trust the dog. Trust the dog's instinct way over yours. I'm Mauro.